If you're someone that likes shallow, and I mean really shallow depth of field lenses, then this might be the video for you. Because in this video, we're going to talk about the Meike 50mm f0.95, yes, f0.95 APS-C lens for Sony E-Mount. Now, full disclosure, Meike sent me this lens to do a review on. No money exchanged hands. They do not get any input into this video, nor do they get to see it before I post it. However, I do get to keep this lens as an FYI. So to talk about the specs and features of this lens, this is a lens designed for the Sony E-Mount system. However, this is available for many other different camera systems and lens mounts as well. And because this lens is designed for APS-C, while it is a 50mm focal length, this works out to be roughly a 75mm field of view with Sony's 1.5 times crop factor that you'll find on its APS-C cameras. And when considering Sony's full-frame cameras, you would want to use this with bodies like the A7 IV or the A7R5 that have the ability to do APS-C crop mode in 4K. It is worth noting, though, that this lens's image circle at the full-frame size might be a bit more passable compared to some other APS-C lenses on full-frame bodies, so perhaps shooting in full-frame and just a bit of cropping in post might suffice, depending on your workflow. Now, as noted before, this lens goes from apertures as wide open as f0.95 all the way to f16, and this is controlled via a clickless aperture ring, so whether you preferred clicked or declicked, this is of the declicked variety. Therefore, allowing for smooth adjustments between aperture control, but you might not know exactly which aperture you're on unless you explicitly look at the lens. Now, this is also a manual focus lens, so yes, you'll see you have a direct manual focus control here with all the different focus and focal length distance markings that you would expect of a lens of this variety. Overall, this manual focus ring is very smooth and allows for some very precise control of the explicit distance and what you want to focus on. One interesting point of note with the lens that not a lot of folks will notice is that as you manually focus the lens, the barrel and main portion will extend and contract depending on what your explicit focus and distance that your setting is. This lens has a minimum focusing distance of 17.7 inches, or roughly 0.45 meters, so you can get decently close on your subject, at least as far as a 50mm lens goes. It also consists of a 62mm front filter thread, if you're looking to adapt different filters or step-up rings to this lens. The lens itself weighs 14.8 ounces, or roughly 420 grams, so a decent amount of weight for a 50mm, but still overall light and compact when compared to some other 50mm offerings. You also have a 7-blade aperture design with this lens overall. And for those curious with what the lens comes with, you have a front cap that is very solid and nicely designed. You have a typical rear cap that you would find on most Sony E-Mount lenses. And the lens itself comes with a series of manuals and the box that you can see beside me here. Now, as I mentioned before, placing this lens on a Sony E-Mount body is going to be like any other. You can match up the red dot with the white dot on the Sony body that you have. And once you've done that, the lens clicks nicely into place. Now, overall, let's talk a little bit about the shooting experience with this lens. Now, if you see my review on the TT Artisan 25mm f2 lens, which I will leave a link to above and in the description below that you can check out, there are a lot of similarities to the shooting experience I had with that lens that I find with this one. Certainly, manual focus lenses give you a certain level of connectedness to your camera body and the shooting experience I find compared to just using any standard, perfectly auto-focusing Sony E-Mount lens, which I'm mostly often used to using. Ultimately, it does mean your technique around manual focus is going to need to be dialed into these bodies. And I do have a video around different manual focusing techniques and how to set up focus peaking that I will also link to that is worth checking out. That said, in the long term of shooting with a lens like this, you might want to consider using a monitor because especially when we're talking about a 0.95 aperture lens, focusing on this can certainly be a unique challenge. Now that isn't a bad thing, of course, because you can get some incredibly, and I mean incredibly shallow depth of field lenses, but you might find, as I did, that you'll have your fair share of challenges getting things in focus at that aperture. In my case, I tended to find around f2, f2.8, even f4 was a good, sweet, safe spot where I could get a nice shallow depth of field that I could still focus accurately. Though needless to say, if you have the ability to dial in a precise shot at a super shallow depth of field, this is a lens more than any that you can do it with. Overall, this lens's size and weight also lends itself to a very nice shooting experience. As noted before, certainly on the lighter end compared to some other 50mm offerings, but also offering a bit more weight that should at least help with perhaps some handheld shooting situations and being able to stable out shots in that sense when it comes to video. Also, as you've been seeing in some of these different B-roll shots from my Sony A7R5 of the Meike 50mm in APS-C crop mode, I am really impressed with what this lens offers optically. So just to talk a bit more about certain aspects of this lens's image quality, though it's always a bit tough to do a sharpness comparison with a manual focus lens, and certainly with a lens that has as shallow a depth of field as this one does, I really do think it is a very sharp lens overall. So this is here at f0.95, and again, with my subjective ability to manually focus. As you can see here, very sharp in the centers. You will notice, of course, a bit of barrel distortion and a lack of sharpness in the corners, but again, we're talking f0.95 here. Now, as we start to step through the apertures, as you can see here at f1.4, much of that sharpness is actually getting better, certainly at least compared to what we saw previously with f0.95, so that is a marked improvement. At f2.8 aperture, I'm really not seeing too much of a difference sharpness-wise, at least at the corners, other than maybe in the most extreme corner situation here compared to what I see at the center of the lens, compared to what I see at other different areas of the lens. And of course, that remains even more so the case as we look at the lens at f5.6 here. So in terms of sharpness, I'm actually very impressed with what this lens offers. Now, you will find some degree of focus breathing with this lens, which I would say for a 50mm overall, and yes, for a lens that offers as shallow a depth of field as this, is not going to be unexpected. Certainly something you would anticipate to see if you're doing some extreme rack focusing at f0.95 between different subjects. And overall, nothing that took away from my shooting experience overall, but just something to keep in mind. And I would also say that this lens offers very nice, pleasing bokeh, certainly round and spherical, not just at the center, but also at the sides and corners of the image. And this is something that remained true no matter how extreme or how defocused the image got. So yet another nice optical benefit and attribute that this lens provides. Now, when it comes to the price of this lens retails for around $250 US. And with different sales and other offers that you might find from time to time, I have seen it for as low as a little over $210 US. Overall, to be able to get a nifty 50 that is not just as affordable as this is, but also as shallow a depth of field as this offers, is something that really makes it unique and stand out among some other options that are out there. So overall, what is my take on the Meike 50mm f0.95 APS-C lens? This lens is without a doubt special. There just simply aren't a lot of things like it on the market when it comes to its price point, when it comes to its build quality and construction, when it comes to the optical quality you get out of this thing. At one end, you could say that the extremely shallow depth of field that this lens offers makes it somewhat of a niche offering, but at the same time, its extremely competitive price point means that it is just as open and accessible as almost any other 50mm that is out there. Truly, if you're looking for that more connected, quasi-vintage manual focus experience that lenses like this offers, and you're looking for it in the package of a nifty 50, I don't think there is a better option out there than this Meike. So that is my take on the Meike 50mm f0.95 APS-C lens for Sony E-Mount. Hopefully this video has been of some help to you. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if it has. There are a number of videos around lenses on this channel that I would encourage you to check out, and there will be many more on the way, so certainly stay tuned for those. For now, that is all I have to say, so thanks for watching.